Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. So, hot on the heels of Resurgent, one of the matchups that has probably gotten quite a bit worse, unfortunately, has been the Wood Elf versus High Elf matchup. It was already a pretty rough one for the Wood Elves, despite the fact that there were certain cheese strats or strategies you could make work. It was definitely pretty difficult to fight already, and it was made even more difficult. Shadow Warriors, despite not being particularly great in the High Elf roster versus most targets, are actually a really strong unit versus Wood Elves. Similarly, Sisters of Avalorn are okay in this matchup, though they don't have the stealth, so they're not quite as good, I would say. But still, not only is the High Elf missile play capable of shutting you down at long range, it's also capable of messing you up if you try to close the gap and fight it out in close quarters. So definitely some rough stuff for the Wood Elves, and in this matchup I'm hoping to kind of demonstrate a way you might be able to break these sort of strats while staying competitive versus others. So for my lord, I decided to bring Orion. Orion has been changed, and for those of you who didn't see the patch notes, he actually took quite a big buff to his melee. He got a bonus versus large of 15. He also got a big increase to his range damage. Got a whole bunch of more armor piercing damage, so now he hits even more like a truck. He can definitely make good use of those javelins to pick away at enemies, and definitely pretty powerful. He still has his usual items, of course, Hawk's Talon, Hounds of Orion, Foe Seeker, as well as Cloak of Isha. So basically bringing the usual Orion. He's very, very strong. Unbreakable, frenzy, all that sort of stuff. His only problem is that he's very squishy, but hopefully with the Cloak of Isha he can be a little tankier. For my front line, it is a 4 Eternal Guard as well as a single Winterheart Guard here. The Winterheart Guard is the Unbreakable Regiment of Renown. They're basically just a better Eternal Guard with charge defense against all and Unbreakable, which is pretty cool. They're a fun unit, and I figured they'd be good here for this Eternal Guard front line. Alongside that, I also do have a Spellslinger of Shadows on a horse mounted, bringing good old Smoke and Mirrors. I don't know why I brought Blessing of the Ancients. It doesn't make too much of a difference. It's a pretty cheap ability, but completely useless here. Power Stone, Penumbral Pendulum, and Enfeebling Foe, as well as Melikoth's Mystifying Miasma, so the usual assortment. Out on the flank, we do have a single Waystalker, and I'm hoping to use him to pick away if my opponent brought elite infantry, such as these Swordmasters of Hoeth. I wanted to be able to chip away at them with the Waystalker, who's still a decent, reasonably competitive ranged hero in his own right. He does have piercing shots and all that sort of stuff. In the backline, we do have Hawkeyes of Drakira, as well as 2 Waywatchers. And these guys, I'm hoping, can kind of shoot down the enemy firing squads, outrange them because they have 190 range and 360 fire, and demoralize them, all that sort of stuff. Finally, in the back, we do have the Loex Tricksters, in case my opponent had brought a bunch of large. These guys are a regiment of renowned war dancers with Azrai Spears. They don't have the same abilities. They do. First of all, they have Frenzy, which means they're far more competitive in close quarters against non-cavalry as well as cavalry. He also has skill ability Stormblades, which gives them plus 26 melee attack, which on top of their frenzy means they're up to 70 melee attack. Against large, with a bonus of 23, that puts them up to about 93 bonus versus melee attack against large, which is monstrous. And finally, Loex Shroud, which gives them stalk and 24% speed, which I think could be very useful against the High Elves. Now, I do apologize for lengthening it through, but my opponent has gone with a full shooting build, and you can see already my front line is going to feel the hurt. For his lord, my opponent brought Ali Thanar, and as well as a Handmaiden alongside him, because these guys provide monstrous buffs to rate of fire. They've got, if you saw my reload skill video, he's got plus 20 reload skill on him. He's got plus 15 reload skill between the item as well as the horn here, the Horn of Isha. He's got plus 15 reload skill, so plus 35 reload skill between just these two lords and hero, between this lord and hero, and that's monstrous. That's basically about 40% increase or decrease in reload time for everything clumped up around them, and you can see these guys are just unloading. If we look at their intershot speed, the Sisters here is 3.5 seconds. These guys are firing crazy fast, and so my opponent has a very powerful firing line here. 2 Lothan Seaguard with shields in the front, archers with light armor in the back to be cheap and efficient. River Queen's Court Guards to deal with probably Treekin, Treemen, that sort of stuff, and then Shadow Warriors on the flanks to provide some peripheral protection against infantry. Then the only infantry here is 2 Swordmasters of Hoeth, who can basically dumpster any infantry I put on the field. Nonetheless, I do get a nice little Vortex here. The Hounds of Orion are a very good spell, I think, against clumped up formations like this. My opponent has to clump up. He doesn't have a choice because he needs to get max value out of Alethanar. Nonetheless, you can see even with their shields, the Winterheart Guard are getting annihilated. I do get a nice little Penumbral Pendulum. He's sweeping through the Lothan Seaguard, disrupting them. But really, these guys are getting slagged, and there's not much I can do about it. I do try to swing the Eternal Guard out and around. The Swordmasters are just holding, though. Spellslinger getting wrecked. Orion gets wrecked. I pull him back. You can see the Way Watchers are trying to trade fire. I'm trying to shut down the more vulnerable units on my opponent's roster. The Archers with light armor, the Shadow Warriors. And I actually left my Loyal Tricksters in the back because I didn't want them getting shot, and I'm actually going to leave them there because eventually I'm going to actually forget about them because I left them there initially out of safety, and then I do forget. So you can't see these Lothran Seaguard expose their flank. They're going to get peppered down by the Way Watchers, but the Way Watchers in turn are getting shot up pretty bad. So definitely got to watch out. You can see the Moonbow there damaging the Way Watchers. So what I'm shortly going to do, I'm just going to start pulling back, and I dart back in with Orion, trying to get value out of his spells, out of his abilities, trying to throw out his Javelin a little bit. You can see it goes in there. It racks up 4 kills against the Every Queen scorecard, which is definitely not bad. And my opponent has had prodigious ammo consumption with the amount of fire he's been putting out. And it's really unfortunate. I just can't match this volume of fire. I really need to stay out of range. So I'm using kind of Orion to soak up some shots while the Way Watchers annihilate the Every Queen scorecard. One of the problems for my opponent's build here is that he didn't bring a caster. He doesn't have Lore of Life. He doesn't have L'Oreal, anything like that. So I don't have to worry about heals. Over here, I do kind of miss-aim that Perennial Pendulum, getting a little greedy, hoping to get damage in on the Swordmasters of Hoth, and completely whiffing. In the meantime, here the Shadow Warriors are getting beaten down by the Eternal Guard with shields. I'm not entirely sure who would win in an actual fair fight, but I hit him with a Melcosmos Defy Miasma to drop their melee defense or their martial prowess. Nonetheless, Swordmasters are going to swing around and even the odds very quickly. Over here, the Winter Guard holding on 6 models, refusing to surrender, as I do drop bombardment on the Lothran Seaguard. I do try to fire down on the Handmaiden, the Every Queen. Big mistake, honestly. Huge waste of Way Watcher ammo that I could have used on these annoying Shadow Warriors. The Eternal Guard are fleeing from the Swordmasters. Not much they can do there, honestly. They're far too slow and to escape, and they really don't have the melee stats to hold up. So what we're doing at this point is just kiting a retreat. You can see I'm leaving my Eternal Guard here to hold and die as best they can. The Way Stalker is still firing away, still raking in kills. He's got 44 kills, which against a unit like Swordmasters of Hoth is really not bad. He's raking in multiple shots, or multiple kills per shot. Orion here does have a slight regen, as long as he's got Cloak of Isha procced. So he'll heal up to about 1,000 something HP, 1,000 like 200 maybe HP, maybe not even. But either way, he's healing up a tiny bit, and so I'm able to use him to kind of soak up shots and trade efficiently. You can see over here the Way Watchers are still whittling down my opponent's shooting. I do get a nice little volley here against the Swordmasters. Not falling for the clone here. I actually didn't know it was the clone, but it is, and I just figured it was the clone because this is what people do with the clone. They try to cheese you, they try to throw it in the front. Unfortunately, I put these guys on free fire for a second just to keep them firing while they're retreating, and they waste a volley on him. But we are outranging my opponent, which is good. Chipping away at him. You can see Orion here kiting on the edges, going after the Swordmasters of Hoth. I'm trying to isolate and pick apart my opponent's forces while falling back with the Way Watchers, so trying to maximize my value there. Swordmasters do get basically annihilated. Unfortunately, another volley wasted there on the fake Alethanar. It's very hard to just deny that or stop that when they're on free fire. Nonetheless, the Swordmasters here do finally rout. And you can see my opponent's army definitely not in the best of shape right now. You can see the balance of power is actually swinging a tiny bit in my favor, and this is because of the Loyal Tricksters, which I just remembered that I even had. They're coming out of the woodwork here, charging in, and they've got some pretty awesome masks. They're like war dancers with masks and like face paint, or different face paint, and they look pretty awesome. And they're kind of closing the gap here, but I don't really want to commit them into a crazy situation because they don't have the missile resist that normal war dancers have. You can see they do take a hit there from Alethanar. So I'm basically decided to just keep chipping away at the Handmaiden, the Shadow Warriors, those annoying units, and I fall back with the Loyal Tricksters, not wanting to waste their potential just yet. Figuring I'll try to do as much damage with my Way Watchers before the final strike. Now another Perennial Pendulum going down. Honestly, I should have resorted to Melcosmos Miasma at this point. We do get some Way Watcher fire on these Lothran Seaguard, figuring that I'll go through the shields anyway with this much fire. Unfortunately, these Archers with light armor are still around and kicking. I definitely should have used the Melcosmos Miasma though there. Honestly, 2 Melcosmos Miasmas at this point would have given me far more value against these units than that single wasted Perennial Pendulum. In the meantime, though, I am using this Eternal Guard, the Way Stalker, and initially was thinking about sending Orion there, but sending these two to deal with the Lothran Seaguard. They're a decent unit in melee, but with having lost their martial prowess against the full health Way Stalker, they're really not going to hold up. Now Orion does get beaten up here, but he does get a nice little bombardment off, hurting these Archers with light armor, hurting the Shadow Warriors, forcing him to break, and he's kind of just kiting around. I'm using Foe Seeker to replenish my vigor, constantly healing. My opponent doesn't have too much he can do against that. Now, unfortunately, he's chipping away at my Way Watchers, but at this point they're basically out of ammo, so I'm less concerned than I was before about getting value out of them. And you can see here my opponent is still shooting at the Loyal Trickster, so I do pop Loyal Shroud just to get that invisibility and start advancing and just gap closing as quickly as I can. Making use. These guys have 58 speed with that ability popped, and we are going to charge straight into the Swordmasters. I'm not entirely sure if my opponent thinks Swordmasters have a charge defense against infantry. They don't. He just stopped instead of countercharging. Either way, they get wiped out here very, very quickly. And the Handmaiden gets surrounded because I popped the Storm of Blades, and of course these guys are now up to 70 melee attack, and they're just going to be tearing. Even the Handmaiden actually has less melee defense than that, while with having martial prowess. So they're going to be able to chop through her rather quickly, wipe out the Swordmasters, and surround that Handmaiden and start beating her down. Now, unfortunately, I made a little bit of a mistake here. I actually mistook this guy for the real Aleth and R. Not entirely sure why, but Aleth hadn't really taken damage up until now, when the real Aleth was over here. So will the real Aleth and R stand up? But he's over here, and so he's running into my low Strixtures, but the low Strixtures are honestly a pretty monstrous unit. With 64 melee defense, Aleth is going to struggle, even with his buffs popped, and even with the AoE buff from the Handmaiden. He's not going to do too great, and so I'm basically just chipping him down and bringing Orion in to do some damage. You can see over here the Lothran Seaguard engaging in a close quarters fight with the Way Watchers. So pretty cool little scene here with the Way Watchers. Of course, they're not the Way Watchers aren't pushovers in melee. They're not. They don't have martial prowess. They're not as good as the Lothran Seaguard. You can see there's a bit of a bug as well with Lothran Seaguard losing their shields for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but I do believe it's been reported on the forums already. Regardless, you can see the Lothran Seaguard has been mopped up over there, which allows me to start pulling my Waystalker back, and now I'm just kind of trying to rally the troops. The balance of power is actually slightly, it's basically balanced, but that's really because Aleth and R is incredibly healthy, and so what I'm doing is cyclocharging Orion. He does have that regen, so I can always heal him back up to 1,000, come back, rinse, repeat. And honestly, those sisters are doing okay. With Storm of Blades popped, they've got, once again, that 70 melee attack, and they're going to be able to punch through Aleth and R's 62 melee defense very efficiently. And you can see the Waystalker's coming back. He's not going to be able to outfight Aleth in a one-on-one, but he can time down and do a bit of hurt. And Aleth isn't particularly tanky. Aleth has like 3,000 HP. You can see he's getting melted. The Lothran Seaguard are routed. I managed to rout off the Swordmasters with the Spellsinger of Shadows, and now it's really just clean up in aisle 9 as we crush Aleth and R. So really just gotta throw things into fast forward to the last seconds here, and that's a game. So I made some serious mistakes in this game, most notably forgetting my low Strixtures longer than I should have. Though then again, perhaps I should have done more skirmishing and spent more time with that rather than just pushing it immediately. I also made bad use of magic, honestly. I only got one good Penumbral Pendulum in that whole game, and really what I should have been trying to do is just get more value out of my Melkoth Mystify Miasma. Had I been spamming that throughout the whole game, I could have been melting down several of these units, most notably the Lothran Seaguard, but also the Shadow Warriors, the Sisters of Avalorn, and all that sort of stuff. As for this build, I do think it's reasonably competitive against High Elves. I don't know if it's the best build, but it does give you do have some anti-large. You do have a lot of shooting. You don't have any snares, but the Waystalker's solid 74 kills. Most of those against Swordmasters of Hoeth. He's already paid for himself. It's important to keep an eye that the Waystalker can and will pay for himself if you utilize him correctly. He can rake in up to 5 or 6 kills on a single good shot, a piercing shot, on the Swordmasters of Hoeth, for example, which is immense. That's huge value there. Because he's a fairly cheap hero. Now, actually, I think one of the things I forgot, I actually did bring Arrows of Kurnus on this guy, which I think I forgot to use throughout the entire game. So I would have been better off taking those off in retrospect, given that I didn't use them. But Arrows of Kurnus is a bit wasted, I think. But otherwise, he's pretty solid, and he can definitely do some good chip damage over time. Orion, 80 kills, great against this sort of blobbed up formations, which High Elves a lot of times will use, especially now that they've got so many AoE rate of fire buffs. Orion with his 2 bombardment spells, or his bombardment and vortex, is actually very solid. None of these High Elf units have good armor anyway, so if you can hit them with that vortex, it'll throw them all around and disrupt them a lot. Spellsinger of Shadows, good, but once again, just misused. Eternal Guard did okay for what they were meant to do. They just meant to soak up shots and waste my opponent's time, which they did admirably well. They're still not, I don't know, I think they're the best choice here, given that the changes, given that we have now the Sisters of Avalorn and the Shadow Warriors. The Shadow Warriors make it incredibly risky to do a full Vanguard build with Wood Elves nowadays, because they can probably outfight Dryads in a straight up fight. And they can definitely trade really well with anything else you put on. They can definitely trade with anything you put on the field, and the Wood Elves and the High Elves can still put some heavy cav on the field. They can Vanguard a bunch of Shadow Warriors, throw some Dragon Princes in the back line, and there's very little you can do against that as Wood Elves, especially if your Way Watchers get caught out. So I don't it's tough. So I do think this is a pretty competitive build. The Way Watchers, of course, providing that range DPS. For my opponent's build, I don't really have much to say. It's a new patch. It's a new meta potentially. It's very susceptible to AoE bombardments and disruptive spells and stuff like that. What he decided to do. Honestly, perhaps the Dwellers Below wouldn't be bad against these sort of shenanigans. A Flock of Doom, maybe Lore of Beasts would be the way to go. I did bring Lore of Shadows, but honestly, I could have gotten some good value out of other lores as well. But yeah, I think it's a pretty annoyingly powerful build. Now, the Swordmasters could have been ditched for some Spearmen, just to be cheaper and more cost efficient, maybe. I don't, but they did rack up a lot of kills. So it was definitely a tough fight for me, and definitely a nasty build here from my opponent, Helios. So definitely watch out if you're playing with Wood Elves, and I don't know if my older builds would still work, but definitely it's rough stuff nowadays. So regardless, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative and hopefully help you with your building of lists against the High Elves if you're playing as Wood Elves against them. If you have any comments, any criticisms, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.